We always look at this in the perspective of the second disaster. That's your quote of the day from Orange County's Emergency Services Director, Kirby Saunders. He's talking about how the county responds to flooding from Chantal. The first disaster is the storm itself. The second disaster is how we pay to fix the damage. And there is a lot of damage. Washed out roads, property damage, water treatment plants shut down. And then there's the damage we can't fix, right? 6 people killed, including this woman who was on her way to work. The Atlantic coast is about 120 miles away from Orange County. So it makes sense that a storm like Chantal came as a surprise to many people, but not to the people in charge. Now, they've known flooding like this was possible, and they got millions of dollars from FEMA to help prepare. But this past spring, that funding went away. Here's a part of the letter the town of Hillsborough sent to FEMA in 2021. It says North Carolina is also expected to experience more frequent and severe riverine flooding events. The current RPS, located within the floodway, is vulnerable to these changing pluvial and riverine flood conditions. A quick Google search, pluvial apparently means a period marked by increased rainfall. Yeah, you could say the night Chantal hit was definitely pluvial. You'll notice the town also used that acronym RPS. That's River Pump Station. Hillsborough has had problems with its river pump station in the past, and during Chantal, the facility flooded, sending 75% of the town's sewage spilling into the Eno River. FEMA awarded Hillsborough $5.81 million to move the pump station out of a flood hazard area. The money came from the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC program. But in April, the Trump administration canceled that program, calling it wasteful and ineffective. The move pulled the funding for Hillsborough and more than a dozen other North Carolina communities that were counting on this. And now Hillsborough's mayor is like, we told you so.
The impact of Tropical Storm Chantal on the river pump station is exactly the type of scenario that BRIC grants were intended to protect the public against.
And the river pump station is just the beginning. Orange County estimates damage from Chantal will cost more than $30 million. Where are they going to get the money for this? And how are they going to pay for the upgrades to mitigate future flooding issues? I brought the question to Orange County's Emergency Services Director. So essentially, pardon the pun when we're talking about copious amounts of rain here, but it's not like there is a rainy day fund that can cover all of this.
Certainly not. Most local governments and individuals alike, some are fortunate to have rainy day funds, and most local governments administration, we operate in the thinnest of margins. There are definitely not reserve funds immediately available. All of our funding does come from taxpayers. So we always look at this in the perspective of the second disaster. There's the physical first disaster of the storm itself and the impacts it's caused to our residents. And the second disaster could potentially be to pay for those public damage costs. And we want to avoid that if all possible, especially another hit to taxpayers. So this is a situation where we have to be really creative. We have to be collaborative amongst local governments. And we have to, open the doors to all possible avenues of additional outside assistance.
How much does Orange County need to do to get its infrastructure where it needs to be in order to withstand the storms that seem to be growing in frequency and perhaps even more importantly, growing in intensity?
That's a really great question, and unfortunately don't have all the answers for that. I will say we do have a hazard mitigation plan that outlines the strategies and actions that we know we need to take and have endorsed, taken. I think what is unknown a lot right now, a lot of those actions are by and large dependent on outside sources of funds. Not many local governments have programs and the capabilities to fund, say, acquisition projects on their own. Where we are acquiring flood-prone properties, residential structures. And a lot is dependent on relying on state funding as well as FEMA federal funding to support those projects. So they don't know how they're going to pay for the repairs, and they don't know how they're going to pay for upgrades to mitigate future flood risks. Another option is the North Carolina Emergency Management. They have an open application period for hazard mitigation projects, and Saunders says Orange County will continue trying that option, among others. But if these grant programs from the feds and the state don't come through,
critical infrastructure upgrades for local communities could get delayed for months. Hillsborough officials say the loss of FEMA funding for that pumping station set them back at least 6 to 8 months. And that's just one example, one community. These storms are going to keep coming. So just like Kirby Saunders, state and federal lawmakers need to be thinking about the second disaster, the public damage costs, and what more can be done to help.